Hey guys, welcome back to ISO Insights. We have Dr. Charles Ruark here again today. And for those of you, I'm sure if you've watched episodes before, you'll know this, but for those that haven't, he's one of the teachers that did our Millennial Temple course, the grand architect, if you will, the one who researched Ezekiel and put together all the information on it. So what we're diving into today is another science review. We're going to be going into a science article that Dr. Ruark's written for us. So hello, Dr. Ruark. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yes, it's great to have you. And what is the name of the article today? What's the subject we're going over?
Well, just to review a little bit about what this about what these YouTube podcasts are all about. We're the overarching discipline of science, if you will.
Yeah.
And
the way scientists think, in other words.
And just the way and the way science works. And we're going to say this again and again to remind the audience why we're doing this. My opinion about science, having studied it as a discipline for many, many years, is that science is wonderful and great and excellent for practical things, practical ideas and goals, like building a bridge or designing a smartphone or creating a better MR machine, better, safer vehicles, cleaner energy, that sort of thing. And we need science, and so this these podcasts are not anti-science by any stretch of the imagination. These podcasts are pro-science, and we want to thank the scientific community for all of the wonderful things that we have that weren't available to us several centuries ago. The problem that we have, or that I have, and I think Theo and ISO has with science, is that science has become a religion. Science tries to answer the same questions that a religion tries to answer.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes the answers that science gives us are very different than the answers that we find in the Bible. And so we're not anti-science. This is not an attack on science. This is more to discuss the limitations of science and how science has, in my opinion, and I think Theo's opinion, overreached what it can reasonably do. When we try to think about science as being able to explain the creation of the universe, for example, and when we think about when they make the statement that give us the benefit of the doubt for the first 10 to the minus 43 seconds as far as the way the universe was created, and we can reliably, after the first 10 to the minus 43 seconds, tell you everything that's happened. And it's reliable. You can hang your hat on it. I think that it's just obvious that they can't do it, and there are many evidences that they can't do it, and that's what we're going to examine. And I just want to say again that in my opinion, science is great for what it can do practically, but science as a religion, which tries to tell us what our place in the universe is, it overreaches. So the first article is on natural causality, human logic, and the number 1/137. And I want to say the way we're doing this is I've written these articles, and I'll probably have some comments as they come to my mind when I read these articles. And Theo, if he thinks it's really important, can interrupt me during the article. But for the most part, there'll be a discussion afterwards. The reason to basically read the article as the article is to simply not leave anything out. Because if I try to look at the article and sort of paraphrase what's in it, it's going to be inevitable that I'm going to leave out some important information. So the article will be read, it will be posted, and and then we're going to have a discussion about it. So here we go. When it comes to science, it is beneficial to understand how science works or operates. I've used the words logic and reason in this particular article frequently. They are synonymous with the way our brain thinks or produces thoughts. Science looks for causality. Causality, as I understand it, began at the beginning of the seventh day of creation when Jesus rested from his work. Causality seeks to explain the present in terms of a sequence or series of past events. The control that our logic exerts over us is quite powerful. Causality is at the root of how and why. No other animal other than us asks how or why this or that came to be. In other words, what was the cause of whatever we are examining? Self-awareness separates us from the animals. Physics seeks to understand Genesis chapter 1 in terms of causality, and it can't be done. Everything Jesus did in this time period was supernatural and had no cause, as we can understand cause and effect. And so we encounter what I term or call apparent causality. Apparent causality may be understood as a false causality. An example of this phenomenon is baryonic acoustic oscillations. Baryon acoustic oscillations are rings or circles in the heavens that are 500 million light years in radius. That's about 150 megaparsecs. A megaparsec is 3.3 million light years, the distance that light travels in that number of years, that only become visible after statistical analysis of the organization or arrangement of millions of galaxies. This was accomplished in 1997 through 2002 in what is known as the 2-degree field galaxy redshift survey. According to the lambda CDM model, and that's the cold dark matter model of cosmology, that's the current model that physicists work off of. At the time of recombination that occurred about 380,000 years after the Big Bang, these acoustic rings were smaller in diameter than they are today.
Question: what is recombination?
Recombination is the time when photons in the plasma were released and the universe became relatively transparent. In other words, until that time, according to this model, light was trapped within the plasma.
Gotcha.
And then when the universe cooled down to about 3,000 degrees Kelvin, which is still quite hot, but much cooler than it started out, the photons were able to be released, and that's the cosmic microwave background radiation.
Gotcha.
All right, so according to this model, and that occurred about 380,000 years after the Big Bang, and these acoustic rings were smaller in diameter than they are today. The diameter of these rings at that time can be calculated from the cosmic microwave background radiation. The difference in the diameter of these rings and the diameter of the rings that we observe in the heavens, today's heavens, can be used as a standard ruler to predict the expansion rate of the universe, known as the Hubble constant or Hubble parameter. A smaller diameter at the time of recombination means that the universe had to expand faster in order to reach the size of 500 million light years that we see today, and hence a larger Hubble. A larger diameter for the ancient rings would mean a slower expansion and a smaller Hubble. The diameter of these rings provide us an early universe standard ruler to obtain a value for the Hubble constant based on the analysis of the power spectrum of the CMB. The power spectrum of the CMB is obtained by analysis of the CMB data acquired from the Planck satellite survey, and this data is deemed to be extremely reliable. So the exact value of the Hubble has been extremely difficult to determine because of what is known as the late universe value calculated by the High-Z supernova research team in 1995 through 1998. And this 5 sigma disagreement, and this value is in 5 sigmas of disagreement with the value predicted by the CDM cosmological model. In other words, you've got an early universe Hubble that is significantly different, and it's not going to be due to some type of an error in the calculation that is significantly different from the late universe measurement. And it turns out that this is very significant to physics. In addition to the standard ruler above, the lambda CDM model provides a value for the Hubble that is based on another analysis of the Planck satellite data that's independent of baryon acoustic isolations. The 2 early universe values are very close together, 67.4 and 67.6 kilometers per second per megaparsec. Extremely distant type 1a supernova. The Z refers here to redshift. This calculation is also deemed extremely reliable. My personal opinion is that the late universe value for the Hubble of 73 kilometers per second is the gold standard, kilometers per second per megaparsec is the gold standard, and that the LCDM model is in error. That's because I trust the cosmic ladder that this team has constructed. I think it's more reliable than a lot of the assumptions that the cosmic ladder is based on, are more reliable assumptions than the assumptions of this LCDM model, and we'll see that later on. This discrepancy is known as the Hubble tension. Has created a crisis in modern cosmology. It's extremely important for physics to have a reliable Hubble constant. I've devoted an article to the Hubble tension, but I mention it as an example of apparent causality or false causality. Although the statistical analysis of the heavens may have produced a statistical bump on a graph corresponding to a believed baryon acoustic isolation at a radius of 150 megaparsecs, it's not real in the sense, this is my opinion now, that it actually represents a confirmation of the epoch of recombination, which is a critical element of the lambda CDM model. Rather, this statistically produced bump is simply a byproduct of creation that we read about in Genesis 1. Isaiah tells us in many verses, chapter 40, verse 22, chapter 42, verse 5, chapter 44, verse 24, chapter 48, verse 13, that the Lord expanded the heavens, and the rings of the 2 DFGRS, that's the survey, redshift survey that they did several decades ago, are simply a statistical byproduct of the Lord's expansion of the heavens. The hypothesized ancient rings had no actual existence, nor do the rings produced by a statistical analysis of the heavens. Evidence of this is the 5 sigma discrepancy existing between the late universe Hubble constant and the early universe Hubble constant. This is a classic example of apparent or false causality. In other words, things can have an appearance of agreeing with each other, but then when you run into this 5 sigma discrepancy, if the ancient baryon acoustic isolations were really present, if there really was an early universe standard ruler, if they can reliably tell us, trust us, that we understand everything after the first 10 to the minus 43 seconds, then if this Planck satellite data and other data that they have is extremely reliable, if there's no error in their calculations, then there's, and I really trust, there are 2 teams that did this, did the late universe calculation. One is called the SCP team, and the other one is called the High-Z supernova research team, independent. And they both came to the same conclusion, and they both came to the same Hubble constant, 73 versus the early universe of 67. They should agree. They really should agree, and they don't. And there's no good explanation for it. Okay?
Yeah.
So sometimes things can appear to be there when they're really not there.
And you're saying that these rings, the expansion of them is because of God's sovereign intervention? Because it says, you mentioned these scriptures where it says God expanded the universe.
I'm saying that they did a statistical analysis. They studied thousands and thousands and thousands of galaxies, and they did a statistical analysis, and they think they see something.
Yeah.
Okay? But if what they're seeing is real, and if these ancient rings were real, then it should produce a standard ruler that agrees with these two teams that did a late universe study, and they don't. Okay, so let's continue on. And I think this is an example, and there are many examples in physics of apparent causality, a false causality. You think something, you think something is there, and it's really not there. Okay, so force of human logic against the Bible, especially Genesis 1 through 3, but also the miracles of the New Testament, even one of which, if it was true, would prove beyond a doubt the validity of all of Scripture. I think it's important to remember that Jesus created causality. Our reality consists of a natural flow of events, creating memories of natural causes, creating natural effects. And this is not going to change, either in the millennium or new creation.
Antichrist religion, that's strong.
It is.
Yeah, that's strong words.
So when science encounters a universe mostly created by God, we've built bridges, TVs, etc., it inappropriately applies the law of cause and effect to a supernaturally created finished product or memory that's known as our universe. Evolution and the Big Bang are science's attempt to understand the universe by means of natural cause and human logic as opposed to faith. Apparent causality is a false causality created by human logic that is based on scientific experiment and theory. This false causality seems logical, real, and convincing because it explains its effect, that would be the universe, in a thoroughly logical, real, and convincing manner. However, although the effect is real, the cause is not real because it didn't happen. This is because there was no cause, as we can understand cause, to the effects or memories or outputs, your choice of how you would like to understand this, that occurred during the 6 days of creation described in Genesis 1. And I'm going to elaborate on this by giving some examples. And here's one. When you see a wrecked vehicle on a wrecker, you know that a wreck occurred. Thus, our reasoning works beautifully for events of everyday life. That is for what Jesus designed it for. But when science extrapolates human reason to try to explain that for which it was never designed to explain, science arrives at the false paradigms of biological evolution and the Big Bang that have become the doctrines of an antichrist religion known as science. I call this sinful logic because had humanity not sinned, this kind of reasoning would never have existed. It's the result of our disobedience. When one studies science, as I have, one begins to understand that our trust in natural cause and effect to arrive at a theory of everything is an inevitable consequence of sin. Our sin makes us doubt the supernatural power that Jesus employed to create the universe. Below is an essay on how Jesus might build a house as opposed to how we would build a house. It highlights a fundamental property of our reality that arises from our God-given free will. We can doubt God. By means of granting us the ability to reason, that is human logic, Jesus granted us the ability to invoke natural causes, producing natural effects, to explain the creation of the universe by means of the laws of physics without acknowledgement of Him as Creator. Therefore, on the surface, natural explanations seem quite reasonable and verifiable by many supporting experiments and data. However, when carefully scrutinized, natural causality cannot remotely explain the existence of our universe. One has to look no further than the amazing constants of nature that physics must employ in their equations to form their calculations. The equations of physics could not exist without these constants. The constants must be measured experimentally or calculated using other constants, and there's 40 of these constants. Depending on what you read, there are about 23 to 26 numbers that account for the fundamental constants of nature. And let me just mention what a constant is. When you have an equation, and obviously almost all equations have an equality sign between them, oftentimes there has to be some type of number, and that's the constant. It doesn't change. That makes the equation equal. In other words, E equal mc squared. Well, the constant there is the velocity of light, so that you can really say energy equal mass, and you can forget the constant. But when you actually want to do the calculation, obviously, you have to include the constant.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a constant is a number that makes the equation work. And physics does not know where these constants come from.
Gotcha.
Okay?
So they're just
They're just there. They
Okay.
basically have no explanation where these 23 to 26 constants come from.
At ISOW, we always strive to provide discounts and incentives for our students.
Now, we're thrilled to announce our best value ever, the ISO All Access Pass.
For just $99 per month, any student can access our entire learning platform.
An ever-expanding library of fascinating, groundbreaking teaching at your fingertips for the average price of just one ISO course.
There has never been such a prime opportunity to pursue your biblical education. Students in many traditional schools pay $100 to learn every day for every single course.
With the All Access Pass, that amount gives you access to our entire course catalog.
At ISOW, you can learn from world-class teachers on a wide variety of subjects, all at your own pace.
With the subscription-based model of the All Access Pass, there are no obligations to put yourself in debt for decades.
If you're hungry to learn about the Word, there's never been a better value.
That's countless hours of teaching and materials with no limit on how much you can learn. Now, more than ever, ISO is excited to connect the Word with the world.
Go to isow.org to get started with the All Access Pass today.
The important point is not the absolute number of these constants, but that physics has no explanation as to why their values are what they are. These constants are fixed. The obvious question is who or what fixed them. If any of these constants were of a different value, life in our universe couldn't exist. Take the equation alpha equals equals epsilon e squared divided by hc, with h being Planck's constant and c the speed of light, where alpha is the fine structure constant that is abbreviated capital FSC, where E is the elementary charge, H is Planck's constant, C is the speed of light, E is the electric constant. Now, it's not necessary to understand anything about these constants for the point that I'm going to make. The point that I'm going to make is that when you relate alpha to all of these constants on the other side, and that's what they are, you come up with a dimensionless quantity. It doesn't really matter exactly how you manipulate the units. They all always cancel out, and you come up with the number 137. And it's independent then of measurement systems. It's a pure number. All the units of measurement cancel out regardless of what measurement system is used. Alpha always equals approximately 1 over 137. And just notice the number of fundamental constants needed to calculate this amazing number. Each one of the constants used in the calculation of alpha must be determined experimentally. Alpha could be the most mysterious number in all of physics, perhaps in the whole of science. It's a seemingly totally random number that has no units of measurement associated with it, whereas almost all other physical constants come with units of measurement, as you can see from the constants needed in the equation. This is a pure number, 1 over 137, and it's necessary for life to exist in our universe. It's found in many of the most important equations of physics. If it had a value significantly different than 1 over 137, life could not exist. Equations of physics that it is used in could not exist without it. Who or what fixed the values of the above fundamental constants, and especially 1 over 137 of nature, in order to create this mysterious, dimensionless fundamental constant? Physics has no answer to this question other than to invoke the existence of an infinite number of coexisting universes, i.e. the multiverse. The necessity for a multiverse and the invocation of the anthropic principle are inevitable consequences of human reasoning when it sinfully uses natural cause to replace the existence of God. Science's use of natural cause is highlighted below by the somewhat humorous, but at the same time extremely serious essay. It's an analogy demonstrating the disastrous consequences that causality produces if wrongly employed. Apparent causality leads us to the wrong conclusions about Genesis 1 through 3. And please think about Hebrews chapter 3, verses 3 through 4. Here it is. For he has been counted worthy, he being Jesus, of more glory than Moses, by just so much as the builder of the house has more honor than the house.
Amen.
So here's the essay. When you see a house, the memory, it's logical to assume that it is the result of a series of natural events, i.e. the building of the house. The house that Jesus built in Genesis 1 was the universe. He did not build the universe through a series of natural events, beginning with what is known as the Big Bang. Otherwise, it would have taken him 13.8 billion years. He did it through 6 supernatural outputs. You can think of those as divine memories, thoughts, or words. Your choice as to which works better for you, better known as the 6 days of creation described in the first chapter of Genesis. Now let's draw an analogy. Consider the construction of a beautiful house, which will be analogous to the universe Jesus created. Jesus will be known as the contractor from now on. On day 1, the contractor lays the foundation of the house, and he's building your house. Since this is your house that he is building for you, you arrive a week later to see a beautiful, perfectly laid foundation. You're surprised that it was finished so quickly. You assume without any discussion that many workers, a lot of concrete, and many hours were involved in the construction of the foundation. But in actuality, it only took the contractor exactly 1 24-hour day because he spoke your foundation into existence. However, without any discussion, you can see that indeed you have employed a superb contractor. So you leave the framing in his hands, and you tell him you have several trips planned, both for business and pleasure. He tells you not to worry. He has it under control. He says for you to take the trips and trust in me. He will build you a superb house. So you return from your first trip in order to check the work. He does not object, and you see a beautiful framing job. The walls and roof, no shingles are up as yet, and your house is secure from wind and rain. The insulation wrap is on the house. You assume many workers and many hours of work and a lot of wood, but in actuality, a contractor spoke your framing into existence without any help, and it took him exactly 1 24-hour day. You are so satisfied with how the work is progressing that after a brief discussion, you entrust him with the remainder of all the details of your house. You have a several-month trip to Europe planned and then on to Asia. You return about a year later to find your beautiful house waiting for you with a perfect driveway, manicured lawn. It's also fully furnished, decorated, and equipped with all the latest appliances. How could that be? It's everything you hoped it would be and so much more. You can only imagine the number of craftsmen, electricians, workers, artists it took to complete such a project, not to mention the building materials, including all the furnishings. The house has the look and feel of a structure at least a year, if not older. But in actuality, it took the contractor exactly 4 more 24-hour days of time to complete his task because he spoke your house into existence supernaturally. The contractor, as a matter of fact, tells you that he built your house in 6 24-hour days and that its construction had long since been completed. He provides you with a reasonably detailed description slash account of the work done on each day, but he doesn't tell you how he did it in such a short period of time. He presents to you his bill of $5 million, which you think is perfectly reasonable for the work done. You move in and find everything works perfectly. He gives you 90 days to pay. Later, some very smart people who, for reasons of their own, come along and tell you that the contractor's account was a lie. According to them, it actually took a year to build your house, and the contractor didn't do the work at all. They bring all sorts of powerful evidence to substantiate their claim, and knowing what you know about construction, it does seem impossible that your house could really have been constructed or built in 6 literal days. They, though, conclusively demonstrate that no building materials were ever furnished by the contractor. No furnishings were ever purchased. However, there is also no record of any craftsmen or workers being hired either that would have supported their claim. Rather, they support their claim with a theory about building called evolution, which declares that given enough time, about a year, the house could have built itself, no matter how unlikely it seems. At first, this theory seems quite preposterous, but genius after genius piles on and calls the contractor a liar. The existence of your house is a fact, and it's also a fact you were gone most of the time. You never actually saw him build anything, but you never saw any workers either. Nevertheless, you begin to doubt the veracity of your contractor and also his very existence. Maybe he's dead. Left out of this story is that you grievously sinned against him. You didn't pay your bill, and he is having nothing more to do with you. In fact, he has promised to return at some point in the future and punish you severely unless you apologize for calling him a liar and pay your bill to the last cent, including accrued interest, which you know you can't pay because you've gone bust financially. In addition, he says that when he returns, he will punish all those who have called him a liar. So that's the end of the essay, and here's the brief summary. When one sees a finished product like a house, car, computer, etc., because of the way our reasoning works, it's logical to assume a prior series or sequence of events leading up to the finished product. However, Jesus creates finished products instantaneously, whether it be plants, animals, humans, or the universe. Although on the surface there may seem to be irrefutable evidence for biological evolution or the Big Bang, a closer examination of these paradigms or religions, that's what I call them, always reveals insoluble mysteries like the number 1/137 or the DNA code, and absurdities like the multiverse. What this demonstrates is a fundamental failure of human reasoning to account for the existence of the universe apart from the existence of a supernatural creator.
Wow. Well, I guess we're in the Q&A section now.
Well, we're in the
discussion.
We're in the discussion section.
So, starting with that last essay that you wrote, which kind of is a parable of creation, you boiled it down at the very end, I think pretty well, to this question of, all right, so creationism answers the question of where did all things come from and why are they here, but the how it happened is a mystery because we can't comprehend the cause and effect of God's power. But evolution claims to give a cause and effect that's observable, and they answer all the different complex systems that are here. They say, well, you can see the cause and effect, it's just we're going to add a lot of time to it. It took a long time, that's why it's all here. But they don't give the why everything's here or the source of everything being here. Well, that wraps up pretty much in a nutshell Dr. Ruark's article about causality. And we'll be diving deeper in other videos about certain subjects that he's introduced here, touching on the multiverse and the different ideas about how science handles things that are really beyond human understanding. So this has been a great science review with Dr. Ruark, and we'll be having you back again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.